I didn't read any of it. I just showed up.
I make all of this effort and I just show up. I don't read stuff. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm just here for a good time.
I'm Ash.
And I'm Callie.
And welcome to The Recovery Feed. This is a podcast about eating disorder recovery, told by people who've lived it. On this show, we talk about the messy and multi-layered reality of eating disorders, what recovery actually looks like, and throw in some not-so-gentle needling of diet and wellness culture for good measure. Come for the lived experience and the hot takes. Stay for the side quests. This podcast is recorded on the lands of the Gadigal and Gubbi Gubbi people. I promise I'm not going to botch your edit on this one, Callie. I'm not going to pull a hack on you. Don't worry, you can trust me.
I trust you.
Oh dear.
Apparently, I should have known better, but can't trust media. Apparently,
Yes.
I'm not in the media often, you know. I don't know these things.
You were duped. Like you need a publicist.
Oh,
yes, so this episode we're talking all about recovery coaches, advocacy, the importance of lived experience, but also what happens when it goes wrong, what you need to be looking for when you add someone like this to your team. But before we get started, I just wanted to give a little quick reminder to subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. Follow us on socials.
Why haven't you done that already? Why haven't they done that? Here, what the fuck are you doing? Sorry, okay,
don't abuse the listeners, Callie.
Sorry, all right.
But yes, please follow us on our socials, linked in the description below. And if you want to leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you will have our undying love and affection for always and forever. Thank you so much.
Please, we don't want to sound desperate, but also...
And if you would like to and in a position to support the show, you can do that at Buy Me a Coffee. It helps fund the running of this podcast to make sure we can keep bringing you episodes like this one. Link in the description below. So we mentioned a few episodes ago that Callie was invited onto Hack, which is a Triple J show, last year to discuss eating disorder coaches and the role of lived experience in the recovery process. And I mean, your part was so short, but listening to it, I was like,
have notes?
There is so much context that they're leaving out that you totally would have mentioned and would have said. You wouldn't have said certain things in that way. And I bet you said X, Y, and Z, but they didn't include it. So, Callie, I want this to be your redemption episode in a way, but it also brings up a topic that is worth talking about, which is like, what is lived experience? What does it mean in practice? And what good it can do, but also where it can go wrong. Now, full disclosure, I am not a recovery coach, nor do I want to be or plan to be. I consider myself an advocate for eating disorder awareness, but you, Callie, you also wouldn't consider yourself a recovery coach either, mainly because you don't like the term.
I just don't like the term. I don't know, it's conflicting, but anyway.
But you are in this space. So how would you define what you do?
Oh, do you know what? It's such a funny question because I feel like I go, this is something that I ponder on, and I talk to everybody about so often because you hit the nail on the head in that I don't identify as a recovery coach. And my reasons for that is is many, many, many reasons. But
which I'm sure we will get into.
We will get into that. And maybe I'll leave kind of that sort of chat for when we get into that. But I just don't align with the term recovery coach. Because recovery is a funny concept. I find when we speak about recovery in the terms of recovery coach, it sounds sort of motivational, or it sounds sort of almost this expectation that somebody has to recover, or someone should be wanting to recover or on the journey to recovery to engage my support.
I feel like the life coach kind of ruined the term coach in a sense.
And coach is such a weird word, isn't it? It's
no shade to life coaches out there.
No,
but I'm just saying
obviously.
Again, when you have there is sort of the stereotype of those kind of people who do that of hyper motivational stuff and saying a whole lot of nothing.
For me? You know? I feel like it's almost that unregulated territory.
We'll get into it.
It's I think that's what the word coach kind of brings up for me, is almost this unregulated, and it's it's not wrong, right? It isn't as it stands at the moment. Recovery coaches in inverted commas or whatever, that field is unregulated, which can be really dangerous.
Again, all of this we are getting into today.
And we will get into that, obviously. Yeah, it's a question. Yeah, like I battle with this daily, and I've had so many conversations with clients and also with other like clinicians around like, what do I do? Because I don't really allow, like, because I'm not, my job also isn't just, helping someone with their eating disorder as well. Like, isn't just, I guess, helping them navigate even just eating disorder things. It's no secret that obviously I have a really big interest area in trauma and neurodivergence, and gender affirming care, and all of that sort of field. But also I find myself that one of probably the biggest things I do in my work is also like case management and casework. I find,
because you're a social worker by background.
Yeah. And so when I worked in child safety, I was a case manager. And my job was primarily coordinating people's care. And I find naturally that I do a lot of that in my work now as well. Like I do a lot of, setting teams up, coordinating, meetings and multidisciplinary team meetings, and communicating, like helping a client communicate between the private and the public system, and helping them like access NDIS. I do a lot of NDIS applications. I've become really fucking good at NDIS applications, but also, managing NDIS funds, and
which for anyone who doesn't know, that is Australia's National Disability Insurance Scheme.
Yes.
For anyone who doesn't know.
Exactly right. So I find I do a lot of that, and then I do a lot of like crisis sort of management. I'm not a crisis service, but I do a lot of crisis management. I do a lot of like a lot of my clients might be actively suicidal, so I do a lot in that sort of area. I do a lot in like trauma management, like just so much. And so I feel like the term recovery coach doesn't even accurately represent what I actually do anyway, if that makes sense.
Yeah. One thing I love about when I see you post about what you do on your socials, you say, you do so many things that you can't really nail it down to one sort of term, but also it's also whatever you want, whatever your client wants you to be. In
Absolutely.
a sense, like you have that flexibility, which I think treatment often lacks so much, but also you do fill certain gaps for whatever those gaps are required for that client, particularly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know that you've used the term eating disorder practitioner before, and when you went on Hack, oh my God, people had opinions about that. But again, it is.
You want to scream?
Yeah. Again, and I think a lot of that does come down to people not understanding certain differences between certain terms. So let's quickly define some terms before we go any further. And all of these we are defining in the context of eating disorders, by the way.
Yeah.
But lived experience means kind of what the name says. It's someone who has a lived experience in the subject. Now this can refer to someone who has an experience in eating disorder themselves, as well as a lived experience caring for someone who is living with an eating disorder. So for example, your mum and your dad would be, and your brothers would be like they have a lived experience.
They have a lived experience of an eating disorder. Absolutely. Yep.
And of course, this
and just on that, we sometimes use the term like lived or living experience, because a lot of voices we have to listen to are also living experience, and we're finding more often like in a lot of different support categories, we do have like an entire workforce that still have a living experience, and they are also really valuable. So that's probably just worth adding into that one too.
Absolutely. And then this lived or living experience can extend to other things, not just eating disorders. So like you mentioned, Cal's, like trauma, sexual assault, substance abuse, suicidality, and even things like caring or living with someone with a disability, someone who's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander, someone who's queer, all of those things, those intersectionalities, all of that encompasses lived experience. Other mental illness like depression, bipolar, BPD, all of them, all class under the umbrella of lived experience. Then you've got obviously the term eating disorder clinician, and this is a mental health professional, dietitian or GP, general practitioner, or family doctor or primary care physician for our American friends. And these are people with qualifications, experience, and training to provide safe and effective eating disorder care. So that's when we say clinician, we're obviously referring to some medical professionals, but then you have eating disorder clinician, it's specific, who have received specific training to care for eating disorders.
Which in Australia is sort of monitored a bit by ANZ AED, and you might see like dietitians or psychologists, whatever, will have a CEDC, maybe like in their email signature that stands for Certified Eating Disorder Clinician, and that's when they've done extra training and certification through ANZ AED. I'm not sure what it is, in other countries, but in Australia and New Zealand, that's what it is here.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you've got the term mental health professional, and this is an umbrella term for people who provide psychological support and evidence-based psychological treatment for people experiencing an eating disorder. Yeah. This can include psychologists, social workers, occupational therapists, psychiatrists, counselors, mental health nurses, nurse practitioners, psychotherapists. All of that are mental health professionals. And then we have peer support workers, which is a professional who is involved in psychosocial and recovery support, and who more often than not, or at least they should, have a similar or lived experience.
Yeah.
And they're there to sort of provide, as it says, peer support from often that does look like advocating for their client.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then lastly, we have the term recovery coach, which obviously we've been talking about. And I'm not going to lie, I had a really hard time finding a solid definition of what a recovery coach is that didn't come from someone who is advertising themselves as one.
Or like, a course or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So obviously this is...
It's uncharted territory, really. It's a newer term.
Yeah, and if you have spent time in the eating disorder space in the last few years, you would have probably heard this term once or twice, or you've seen someone talking about themselves or referring to themselves as a recovery coach. So the best sort of definition that I came together with is, and feel free to tell me if I'm right or wrong. A recovery coach is a non-clinical support person who uses their lived experience and ideally some form of specialized training to help someone with an eating disorder navigate their day-to-day recovery outside of formal treatment. They are, again, ideally, designed to work alongside the clinical team to support the person in recovery, but they are also not able, at least in Australia, to provide any nutritional, medical, or psychological services. They are not licensed to do that.
No.
So ideally, it is also, they're meant to be sort of alongside a clinical team, adjunct to extra
kind of like
help.
an addition.
Yeah, but they should never be instead of.
No, absolutely
now,
not.
Our position on this podcast, and of course framing for this episode, is that we're not anti-recovery coach by
absolutely not.
any means.
Absolutely not. I think they're such a valuable part of a team. 100%.
They absolutely serve their place, and I think lived experience and someone advocating for the client absolutely belongs in recovery teams.
And just having someone that, might get what you're feeling or going through. And I'll attach to that of course, we don't ever want someone to be like, well, I did this, so you should be able to too. Or if I did this, then, that's, I don't believe part of it. We'll get into that. But it can be really powerful for someone to be working with someone who isn't, obviously approaching them in like a medical or a clinical way. And it more so is just that makes sense. Or, it's just like sort of someone that can get it, that it just feels a bit easier to relate to.
Absolutely. And you kind of have already sort of explained that, but like the very essence of a recovery coach, recovery practitioner, recovery guide, peer support worker, whatever term you want to use, we will, for the sake of brevity, we'll just use the term recovery coach, even though like to speak about it broadly. Yes, it's person in this role.
Support,
Exactly. But it's ideally someone to provide that support to someone going through recovery outside of clinical appointments, as well as during clinical appointments as well, because that's also something that they can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we know that recovery happens outside of these environments in everyday life. And, you might have a pre-approved plan for that recovery, but once you're back in sort of everyday life, implementing that can look very, very different. And it's ideally they're there to provide support, accountability, and help you through that real world application.
And, it's why we see, like, for example, like just, and not even in the context of just eating disorders. So like the NDIS, for example, we obviously have so much funding for people around that sort of type of support because there's so much value to it. There's so much value in having someone that can help in the day-to-day and, just everyday things rather than just like particular appointments, which is, you know, for most people, if they're, you know, if there's NDIS funding in terms of like psychosocial, for psychosocial needs, we see support work is the most funded thing for them because it is the most evidence-based, and not, you know, humans aren't evidence-based beings, but is the most evidence-based support that is helpful for people. And we see the majority of our funding sort of go there for people.
Yeah. And again, so it's a really, really crucial role for someone to have on their team. But of course, because there is no universally regulated definition of a recovery coach, especially in Australia, it means that anyone can technically call themselves one. Training and qualifications can vary very wildly. The scope of practice isn't always clear and well defined. And like I said, it's largely self-regulated. So there's no one to sort of monitor any professional conduct, and there's no accountability either. So this is why the role can be incredibly helpful in the right hands and potentially harmful without boundaries or training.
Yeah, absolutely.
When things go wrong.
Yeah.
We thought it would be helpful to go over why lived experience is so important across the board, but we'll talk about why recovery coaches can be helpful, what happens when they go wrong, and also what to look out for if you are seeking to someone to join your recovery team in this capacity.
Which, you know, hi, hack, you can use our episode if you'd like, because this is what it should have been. You're welcome.
No shade, but also a bit of shade. And of course, as we go through this, we're not talking about any recovery coach in particular. This isn't aimed at anyone or any person or any group. This isn't, you know, it's not about any kind of certification or anything like that. No. We are talking broadly about the role of recovery coaches and lived experience representatives in a general context. Yeah. Just expressing our own personal opinions on it. And me in particular, like, I have no personal investment in this matter and no stake in the game. I'm not saying, Callie, that you do, but in terms of like, I'm aiming to try and bring as objective an opinion as possible.
Well, I mean, it's no, I guess, like, secret that obviously I'm very vocal about this stuff, right? Yeah. And but you know, obviously there's a reason I'm so vocal about it, because it's so important. And obviously I believe in what I do so much and the value of what I do so much, and the value that, and, you know, again, this is not to sort of toot my own horn, not to say that I'm better than anyone. I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But I do separate myself from that term for a reason. But also that's not saying that if people don't do what I do, they do sort of more so the traditional recovery coach, and that's not me shitting on them. That's still very valuable, and we want to talk about that. But yeah, like we said, there's obvious harms that can come alongside some of this field, and I think it is really important because it is unregulated and it should be regulated, but in such a sensitive area such as eating disorders, it's such a privilege to work with people with eating disorders that we have to take that and treat it with a lot of care, as this is why I guess this is an important topic.
Yeah, 100%. So I know that regular listeners of this podcast will know why we go on about lived experience so much, but Callie, tell us, why is lived experience so important?
Without lived experience, what do we have? Right?
Well, you have the system that existed before people actually started listening to lived experience.
Exactly.
Which was a system that doesn't really work very well. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it works amazingly now, but
no, but
it's definitely made a difference.
Even that concept, right, though, even, you know, the system without lived experience still needed lived experience. Do you know what I mean? Like, so everything, all of the treatment that we use have to be research based, has to be evidence based, has to have gone, you know, and we spoke about this, you know, in our first episode back around the research and how important research is, and how important it is that we push research through and get funding for research and have, you know, we contribute to research, because without that, nothing can change. We can't change a damn thing unless we have evidence and research. You know, nothing can change without that. And so even, you know, back then, whilst, okay, hey, we need to start changing some shit, and there's research now that is attempting to do that, you know, ultimately though, even back then, the treatment was formed on research. It was formed on people giving their experiences and data and, treatment outcomes and shit like that. And were they warped? Yes, absolutely. Was it, but even in essence, even back then, lived experience was still a very important factor, right? It's not obviously treated in the same way as it is now. Now we're sort of increasingly seeing it treated as a profession. As Sarah Maguire from Inside Out has always said to anybody that walks through her doors or she speaks to, someone with lived experience is automatically qualified. They have a degree already. And so without lived experience, we do truly have fucking nothing, even with the harmful treatments. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think, yes, clinical knowledge is absolutely important, and it's super integral to, and especially clinical knowledge that is based off of research that has been informed by lived experience. But clinical knowledge alone is not enough.
My God, no.
We
see it every day.
Exactly. And people with lived experience bring that nuanced understanding of disordered thoughts or the logic, or oftentimes the complete lack of logic about the illness itself. And it brings awareness to treatment gaps and the harms that it can do. Having that lived experience allows you to have a connection with whatever treatment you're getting with a clinician that you have, or by the treatment that you're receiving, because otherwise you may as well be speaking a different language.
Oh, totally. And, I'm always so vocal about how much I learn from my clients, right? I have a lived experience of, a lot of things, but I also don't have a lived experience of a lot of things. And my lived experience around, eating disorder treatment or trauma or, violence or whatever is always going to be different to my clients. It's never going to be the same thing.
Yeah.
And, I'm always very vocal about if I don't fucking know something, I'm not going to pretend I know it. I will be very I'm not sure. Let me go find out. Or can you tell me more about that? Because everybody is the expert in their own lives and their own body. And if we're not listening to our clients' lived experience, around their treatment or around what they're going through, we're fucked. We're shit clinicians. We're shit we shouldn't be doing this job.
Yeah, exactly. And I think lived experience is, in the form that it is now, is technically a new thing, because it really was not talked about in treatment when I was dealing with it, 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
I remember the only way that I sort of got help was because someone was speaking about their story on a news article. That was it. When I went into treatment, there was no sort of lived experience, workers there. No one was really talking about it. But as soon as
every now and then you'd get someone come in for a talk, right? You'd be sitting in the little meeting or the little group room, and they'd get someone from the outside world to come in and talk about what they'd been through, which is always an interesting experience. But
and again, if you had some of that, but it's always seemed as an add-on as opposed to something that was fully integrated into treatment.
Oh, absolutely. It was never integrated.
Exactly. And I think that's what we're kind of getting at, is that by integrating lived experience into the whole process, you start to feel seen and you start to really feel understood. And it kind of does, as much as it can, have a little bit of that hope that is, that is in there, because
it's empowering, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But I mean, if it's done correctly, that's why it's designed.
Yeah.
That's the way it's the ideal way that it's supposed to land.
Yeah.
Essentially what we're getting into is, you can study eating disorders for 10 years and still not understand what it's like to negotiate with your own brain after overeating a damn piece of pizza,
And it truly is one of those things where we say it so often, unless you've been, you can't explain it to someone unless they've actually been through it themselves. How hard is it to tell someone who's never had an eating disorder to explain a particular, and everyone sort of struggles with that, right?
Yeah.
But someone who has been through it can innately remember those feelings. You never forget those feelings. And it doesn't mean it's the same feeling. It doesn't mean, the same treatment should be applied, but someone who has never had an eating disorder could never understand truly what it feels like to battle that.
Exactly. And I think also it's really important to know what lived experience integration actually means to be effective, because yes, obviously having it as part of recovery teams is a thing that is now done, but it's also in, as we were saying, in research, having research that is co-designed and co-produced.
Not tick
And
box.
exactly. It's the consultation with lived experience throughout every step of the way in terms of research, health policy, guidelines, treatments, everything. And again, it's not just that asking for an opinion and being like, oh yeah, that's nice, and then we'll never
give me a comment,
revisit it.
or I've got to, we've got to get this approved, we've got to ask someone that has a lived experience of this so we can tick that box so we can get this approval pushed through.
Exactly. What it really means is involving lived experience in every step of the way, not just to
fostering it, listening and inviting them to the table. And it should truly be treated as a profession and as an expertise, sitting at that table rather than just like a helpful little add-on.
Exactly. So let's talk about what that expertise looks like when in a good way, like when it can genuinely be life-changing. So saying like all of this, when you add that lived experience voice to your treatment team, it can make such a difference.
Totally.
When you have someone with a lived experience there to advocate for you, they may be the strength that you might not have at that time. Honestly, that like I remember one thing that you told me, it really resonated was they just hold that hope for a while, which I thought was really, so a really, really simple saying, but that's kind of what a recovery coach can do is they can literally just hold
it for you until you're ready to take it back yourself.
Exactly. And they can be really, really good in terms of filling the gaps between therapy sessions or clinical sessions, whether it would be your dietitian or your psychologist or whatever it is. But they can also be really practical and provide that real life support.
It's implementing what you've done in sessions with your psychologist and your dietitian.
Exactly. I know some things that you do, Callie, which are like, I wish that I had this when I was going through it. You have a meal with somebody or you go grocery shopping with them. You navigate, you can, I'm saying you, but as the royal you as well, navigating triggers sort of in real time, reducing that isolation, which I think is really, really important.
Also helping you use skills, reminding you of skills or, helping you build those skills or practice those skills, because it's one thing having a skill, but it's another thing actually implementing the skill or practicing the skill.
And just being there to offer that support in between appointments.
Totally.
But I think the main thing is offering hope through visibility by having someone who's literally been there and made it through. There's someone who's on your side being able to at least give you an idea of what the end goal might look like. And again, that might look different to everybody. And that's kind of what is really important to negotiate and to clarify with your recovery coach, recovery practitioner, whatever,
And also I think it's that, and this is, obviously not just with recovery coaches or, whatever we were, again, we don't need to, I guess, say every single time we meet the whole collective, but, but also, it's the same as when, a lot of, because we've seen so many dietitians and psychologists, et cetera, come through that also have a lived experience, which is also really powerful, as a collective. So lived experience in, treatment, in your treatment team as a collective, right? And I remember myself, because I actually did have a lived experience team, like my psychologist and dietitian. And I always remember thinking that when they told me to do something, or they were, talking about something with me, I always remember thinking, and this is something I bring through with my work as well, is that they understand how that feels. So when they tell me to do something, they're not just telling me to do it because they're trying to get me to eat more, or they're, trying to get whatever it is. When they're, and that might be their goal, but when they're telling me to do it, they know how that feels, rather than, I remember if I had a psychologist telling me that I needed to work on X, Y, Z, I would think in the back of my brain, but you have no fucking idea how it actually feels to practically do that. And that was always a really big challenge for me with my treating teams was, well, you have no fucking clue how that actually feels. You're asking me to do this and you're asking me to throw myself into a flaming pit of fire and walk on glass and just be okay with it and just cope and just do it and then do it again and do it again and do it again. You have no fucking clue how that feels. Whereas when I had someone with a lived experience on my team telling me to do that, in the back of my brain, I could say to myself, oh, they are telling me to do this because it's important. They have no ulterior motives behind this. And they also know how it feels to do that thing that's really hard and to repeatedly do it. And I think that is also super powerful. It doesn't always look like doing things proactively. It can also just be, like I said, a lot of my clients don't have hope or aren't even focusing on recovery. They're just focusing on like purely surviving. it's powerful in those aspects as well, because if I'm saying, they say they're in hospital and I'm sitting beside them in their hospital bed and I'm just saying, you're okay, you're safe. They know that I'm not just talking from nowhere in that sort of regard as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I know that I felt this way when I was going through recovery. It's you get this idea in your head that a lot of your doctors or clinicians have this, well, I know best. And if they don't have that lived experience, it can be like, well, how do you know best? But when they have that lived experience, it kind of softens that a little bit of, okay, maybe
you're trying to destroy my life.
Yeah.
You're trying to fuck me up.
Yeah. Or I don't really matter to you, or those kind of things.
I used to think you're trying to kill me. Like, I think you're trying to kill me.
Yeah. And it's that idea that your eating disorder will constantly try and fight against it. But when you have someone with lived experience on your team, it almost, at least for me, I can imagine, it would almost kind of offer that rebuttal to your eating disorder in a way.
I agree. I also think it's suicide prevention. This is another really passionate topic of mine, obviously. And, I don't shy away from talking about suicide because I think,
harm reduction as well.
And harm reduction. Because, and I say this to so many of my clients, and, it's no secret that I have had attempts and have been, I'm no longer suicidal, but for most of my life I was suicidal. And it's almost like for so many of my clients, especially because I obviously specialize in longstanding and trauma, for so many of my clients, of course you're fucking suicidal. Why wouldn't you be? You know what I mean? Like, why wouldn't you be suicidal when you're looking down the barrel of this being your life and, this fucking crucifying your brain and this challenge and this challenge and this challenge? Why wouldn't you be suicidal? Whereas on the flip side with people...
Or if you're going through treatment and they're saying, this is the gold standard of treatment, and you're just sitting there being like, well, great, it's not working.
Totally.
So, okay, there's something wrong with me. Why wouldn't you feel that way, you know?
Yeah, exactly right. It's kind of like, it's preventative, right? It's like, yeah, of course you fucking want to kill yourself. Why would you want to be alive when your life feels this way? And so having someone that gets that side of it as well, rather than, because so many people freak out when you mention the word suicide. God forbid you say that you're suicidal. People go, oh shit. And they go into obviously it's very important to be, to do all of your safety checks and to make sure, somebody's safe if they are suicidal. There's a process you have to follow, and that's super fucking important. But I don't even think a lot of clinicians do that well, but that's another topic. But a
topic we have covered, by the way.
Yes, we have actually covered. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't. But it's in the archives. But it's also, it is truly also suicide prevention as well, which is a really important aspect of eating disorder, in inverted commas, recovery, or, your journey. Because, of course you're fucking suicidal. And to have someone that just gets that and doesn't catastrophize that and just allows you to speak about it, it's actually super, super important as well.
Yeah. Who do you think recovery coaches are, especially helpful for? Do you think?
Everyone, with a caveat. Everyone with a caveat. That when I say everyone, I truly believe, again, it's not to say that I'm better than anyone, but I truly believe the work I do is important and beneficial to everyone. But that's
because it has that flexibility as well, which I think is, as we've talked about.
Yeah, it's
when recovery coaching is done right, everyone can benefit.
Right though, because I guess I go into some, and this is and maybe another reason why I don't like the term recovery coach for myself is because I guess I don't just do that, if that makes sense. I guess what I do is an aspect of that and an element of that, but it is also more. And it also covers a lot of different areas, whereas some recovery coaches don't do everything I do, which is fine as well and is very important on some teams and
and
for some
places
clients.
For those people as well.
Absolute places for those people. But though I guess those and and it's like anything, it's like dietitians and their different specialties, right? Like a dietitian might specialize in eating disorders, but they might specialize in neurodivergence and eating disorders. They might specialize in
intuitive eating
or intuitive eating, or they might specialize in using the Raves model, which isn't going to be appropriate for those with neurodivergence, and they might specialize in gender affirming care or whatever, right? There's so many different specialties.
Or a body image specialist who wouldn't be great for someone who is gender non-conforming, because again, we've covered this.
Go back and listen to those episodes.
With Dr. 𝗗𝗂𝗧. Definitely recommend that one.
Absolutely.
And Hayden Moon as well.
Yeah, Hayden. Right. So like it's specialties, right? Like nobody is going to be like what I specialize in and what I do, someone else might not do. And that's fine. That doesn't mean that they don't have a place. So when I say like everybody, it's finding who that person is. Like it's finding who fits on your team in regards to what your presentations are. And when I say like myself, everybody, like obviously there are some people that I'm not going to work for either. You know what I mean? And I get it all the time. If someone's looking for someone who's going to do traditional just recovery coaching with them, yeah, I'm not your gal. Like I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to sit down with a book with you and go through this book with you around recovery because that's not what I believe in or that's not what I do.
Yeah. And you don't want to be limited to just that. Because you
exactly
have
right.
more to offer.
Exactly right. And so, so that's my everyone with a caveat.
Yeah. I think also if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, okay, but what about me as well? I think it can be helpful for people who might be in the really early stages of an eating disorder to try and catch that really, really quickly. Especially if you're thinking, oh my God, I think I might be developing a problem, but I don't qualify, quote unquote, for hospitalization or inpatient or anything like that. A recovery coach with lived experience can be super helpful.
Oh yeah. Because, actually a topic I talk about so fucking much lately is that actually people can have a full-blown eating disorder and not be receiving hospital care, right? Like some people don't access treatment. Some people can't access treatment. Some people aren't privileged enough to access treatment because treatment is a privilege. Even if and then when I say treatment is a privilege, right? Like, obviously, I'm not saying that, because you get treatment, you're a really privileged person. You know what I mean? Like, it is truthful that some people will never access treatment. And it is a really big thing in the space that if you have someone that hasn't accessed treatment, they think that their journey isn't valid or they think it's not as severe or they think it's not on par with somebody who has been in hospital X amount of times. And I just... as a space collectively, I think we really do focus on the people that have received hospitalization or inpatient care or, very pointed eating disorder treatment. And I would love to see as a space collectively, we start to hear more from the voices of people who don't receive that because they are just as important and we need to capture them in our sort of image of what eating disorder treatment is.
Completely.
I'll get off my little high horse there now.
No, stay up there. You look good up there.
Oh, thank you.
I think also people in like that quasi-recovery phase, again, we've covered this on the pod before, so go back and listen to that one. This is just a plug for all of our old...
I feel like we've covered so much and we have so much still to cover, but like...
I know, right?
Silly.
People in the quasi-recovery stage, when you're feeling just that really, really stuck, you're not seeing progress, that could also be a really, really good time to introduce a recovery coach. Anyone who's transitioning maybe out of inpatient care or outpatient care and doing all of those kind of things.
Which can we do an episode on that discharge at some point, please? Because that's like grinding my gears at the moment. But yeah, yes.
Yes. Then again, we've already talked about this, but people who may feel misunderstood by traditional systems, you can go and seek out recovery coaches that specialize in those key areas that are able to sort of navigate those traditional systems with you. And then again, the people who just aren't quote unquote sick enough to get treatment but need that more focused support.
And even people who don't want to recover.
Yeah.
People who are fucking in it and have no interest in recovery. Mm-hmm. And again, I guess that's what, it's a weird concept, I guess. I have no interest in recovery and I'm going to seek out a recovery coach, which is, again, why I guess I shift away from that title. But like, Absolutely. It's also really helpful in that stage. People, especially like I see so many, like with trauma, like I, again, not to toot my own horn, but I think I'm very valuable for my clients with trauma, especially because it's such an unprecedented area. It's such an area that can show up unannounced at any given moment, and to have someone that can kind of support you through that at any given moment is also really helpful.
Completely. And again, we're talking about this in the
with
sense
proper
that
training.
Yes, proper training. That's again, goes without saying, but they are also
Does it go without saying? I don't know. Anyway, sorry.
Common sense ain't common enough, man. But again, they are not a replacement for a medical and clinical team. They are designed to work with them adjunct to clinical treatment. And I also think one thing that isn't talked about enough is that it's really important to establish boundaries with the person that you know, with your recovery coach, and like have an agreed upon set of circumstances that, you know, of when you will use them.
Yes.
But a good part of that as well is that you can use them how you want to use them, you know, but that has to be sort of agreed upon ahead of time. And I just think when used correctly, recovery coaches can provide that personalized support and more flexibility, which is often what is lacking in those traditional treatments.
Yeah, agree.
But of course, recovery coaches can go wrong. So let's talk about that.
Let's get into it.
So, I mean, the first thing straight off the bat is what we've already spoken about, is that it has that lack of regulation in the recovery coach space.
Yeah.
All of it is self-regulated. There's no industry body to sort of oversee this. There's no like license that you have to earn and keep.
No.
And yes, there are certifications that you can receive. And I believe there is a peer support certificate that you can get from TAFE, which for those who don't know is an Australian tertiary education body. But yeah, there are no licenses that are provided. They're not registered with APRA.
There's no one you can report someone to. They're kind of like, I guess, can operate from their own standards, models, like, do kind of whatever background. Yeah,
there's no body that is there to revoke any sort of certifications should they be doing anything unscrupulous.
No.
And with that little regulation, it leaves the door wide open to grifters who are grossly underqualified and in worst cases very harmful. And again,
which we unfortunately see a lot.
And it's the same across the board with any industry, right? That is unregulated. You know, if you don't have that, like someone who's overseeing,
you know, like nutritionists, we have qualified nutritionists, you know, university qualified nutritionists, I should say, and then we have ones that are a PT and decided that they also want to give their clients meal plans.
Yes. So on that note. There was a really, really good article from The Guardian UK back in 2023 that talks about this. Which was really interesting. I'll link it in the description. So there are these so-called coaches, this is in the UK, that advertise all of their services on social media, of course, charging as much as £1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, it must be nice, but sure.
Oh, yeah, I've heard worse, but yeah.
Yeah. The article said...
So for, like, Australian people, £1,000 equates to, like, $2,000, roughly.
Yeah, roughly. It's
obviously depending on the market, but you can kind of just double it and you've got your,
hella spenny. The article then says, quote, one coach promised to help clients, quote, banish binge eating forever. Another said
they are especially grifty in the binge eating space.
Right?
Oh,
so bad.
Bit of fat phobia attached to that too. But anyway, yes.
Another said that full recovery is possible, noting that people will learn to live free of guilt around eating.
What is that? What is that? What does that mean?
I mean,
what does that mean, Ash? What does that mean?
To be fair, that may be true for some, but
still, what does that mean?
Yes. And also to advertise it as a promise, especially with very little training, is bold. It is bold.
How?
Man.
Yeah. What's your time frame too, dude?
Oh, well, you just didn't try hard enough.
What's your screener like? It's you. It's the same as it's diet industry shit. It's diet culture. It's you. You're the problem. You just didn't do the diet hard enough.
Exactly.
You were weak. You shouldn't have. Yeah.
The article then says that some coaches expected clients to sign up for a minimum 2-month period. So cha-ching, right?
Ooh,
I know.
Yeah.
Weird, huh? And then the next bit, I'm just going to read directly from the article because it's just such a great example of how people use like short courses to claim that they're now certified to work with eating disorders. So, quote, The Guardian has found that many coaches cite short courses which are intended as professional development for psychologists as qualification to practice. The National Centre for Eating Disorders, NCED, offers a number of professional training courses accredited by the British Psychological Society, BPS. The Guardian found a number of coaches were using these courses to claim they were qualified to offer professional services to people with eating disorders. Agnes Ayton, chair of the Royal College of Psychiatrists, eating disorders faculty, said she was amazed to see people, quote, advertising themselves as experts after one course. Eating disorders sit between physical and mental health, so the risks associated with eating disorders can be physically debilitating and potentially fatal, Ayton said. I don't know why there is not better regulation on that, because it is a lot of regulation for medical professionals, but therapy is the first line of treatment for eating disorders, and if it is not delivered properly, it can be harmful or misleading. Approached by The Guardian, the BPS said that these courses are approved as professional development for psychologists and, quote, as learning opportunities as opposed to qualification to practice, which always requires the grounding in psychological knowledge that comes from a chartered psychologist or HCPC registered practitioner psychologists, end quote. Deanne Jade, founder of NCED, said when people do the course, they are told they absolutely cannot claim to, quote, have eating disorder experience, especially since we do it on Zoom and half of those people involved have their faces blocked out, she said. She raised concerns about people operating without having the correct background, saying, we know someone right now who is claiming to be doing an advanced diploma in eating disorders and diversity. I have written to them and said, in what respect can you claim this as an advanced diploma? Professor Tony Lavender, workforce and training lead for the British Psychological Society's Division of Clinical Psychology, said that what people were doing was simply fraud. End quote.
But do you know what the issue is with that? Is they can do nothing about it. There's nothing 100%. They can do about that. There is absolutely nothing you can do about it. So this
it's all like small. There's all like small claims and civil stuff. That's the only thing.
Yes, but that's if they do harm. You know, if someone decides to actually. So, and that's another, I think, really important point to make here. Here we go. So just because. Buckle in. Just because someone, okay, so we spoke before about lived experience and lived experience being expertise and a profession, and I do truly believe that. However, it has its limitations, and its limitations is that it is not a qualification to make you qualified to practice with other individuals using your lived experience alone. It's just not ethical. And this is where we start to see people, okay, so you've done a short course in eating disorders.
Yeah.
It's just, it's not a qualification. And I always joke that I am someone that collects certifications. Like, it's one of my little hobbies that I have, that I just collect. Oh, what's the next certificate? So I'm about to, I graduate my master's at the end of this year. And then I'm like, oh, okay, so what's next? I think I'm going to do a diploma in, mental health and neuroscience. And I'm like, cool, I might add that to my little collection, but I am not just because I've done, a trauma certification, it doesn't make me an EMDR specialist, because I can go and do, you best believe that where I do a lot of my professional development, I can go and do an EMDR certification. It doesn't make me practice in doing EMDR, and it's not a dissimilar thing. So once I graduate from my master's, I have every intention to go and do my proper EMDR certification, which is, a proper course to do to become properly certified. But you can also go do just short courses on EMDR. And are they informative? Yeah, totally. Are they worth doing for someone to do as professional development? Yeah, totally. But it doesn't make me an EMDR therapist.
It's not a substitute for an actual qualification and certification to
exactly
actually
right.
provide that.
And lived experience treatment. Is the same. If we have, and we do unfortunately see this in, a lot of the recovery coaching space of people who have a lived experience and then do a short course, and then they go out and work with people with eating disorders. And that's when we start to see that, well, I did this, so you can do it too. And my life was terrible with an eating disorder, and now it's rainbows and butterflies, and you too can have a rainbow and butterfly life. Are you living in 2026? Have you seen the dumpster fire that is the world? People with eating disorders also have significant trauma, and increasingly so, we're finding out so much neurodivergence, fucking so much, and you're telling them, you're selling, and this is the other issue with that, right, is that people are desperate to not suffer. People will do any, especially what I find is parents get sucked in by this because they are looking for anything to cure their child.
Yeah, they're monetizing vulnerability, and that's just super gross.
They are capitalizing on it. And so my newest, it's not new at all, I've been saying it for a very long time, but one of my high horses that I like to get on is that eating disorders aren't a primary diagnosis. For most people, in fact, I would almost say everybody, eating disorders are a secondary, third, fourth, fifth diagnosis. It's just that they can become so acute that they become the primary diagnosis, that they become the sole focus of someone's treatment, because they could die, or their physical symptoms are presenting in such a way, or, you know, eating disorders, as we know, is something that they can show somebody how much pain I'm in, you know, the restriction or the binge eating or whatever can show you, can indicate to you the level of suffering that I'm at. But the fact is that nobody just has an eating disorder. It is usually a secondary diagnosis that exists because of trauma, because of, you know, neurodivergence, because, you know, I haven't explored my gender, my, you know, the body dysmorphia, or, you know, fucking gender dysphoria. Like, it's always secondary. And like, that sounds so blanket. Like, it's probably like, Callie, how can you say that everybody's eating disorder is secondary? Like, I would almost confidently actually sit here. You know what? I'm gonna fucking say it. Everyone's eating disorder is secondary. It might present as primary, but it's not.
But it can also literally just be from growing up with such absolutely warped ideas of beauty standards and things like that, in terms of like the environment that you grew up in. It doesn't need to be, oh, there's something else wrong with you, quote unquote.
No, like, but that is also secondary.
But and also I would consider like having those worldviews as, you know, that's something that you also need to treat alongside.
Well, you're doing the eating disorder for safety aspects, because you've been taught this thing about the world, and you want to fit into the world of, you know, everyone is in this world just wanting to fit in. Everybody just wants to fit in. And it's why, you know, obviously we're not going to get in because it's a completely different topic, but it's why, you know, we see the fuckery of like red pill shit online, right? It's why we see you know, young boys engage in disgusting content online, because it gives them a place to belong. And so if I can engage in this eating disorder and these behaviors, and it gives me a sense of belonging, it allows me, especially, you know, maybe I exist in a fat body. And again, obviously I'm in a very privileged body, so I can't speak, you know, primarily, you know, firsthand experience about this, but a lot of my clients, you know, can. You know, I just want to belong, and this is the thing that's going to help me belong. It's going to help me not be bullied anymore. It's going to help people treat me like an actual fucking human being rather than someone who's not. Like, it's, yeah. What was my point of that? I just went on a little like tangent, and I feel like there was a point to it. I hope like everyone made sense of that.
The point is that people will absolutely monetize vulnerability, and it's super gross.
It's so gross.
You see this a lot in like, I have seen it in like the personal trainer and fitness spaces of people who are claiming to be fitness and recovery coaches while peddling extremely dangerous ideas because they've just done a short course.
Okay, so this is a good example of that. Good job for bringing that. So just yesterday on my Sunshine Coast Mums Group Instagram page, Facebook page, because you know I love that page. Somebody made a post and it was basically outlining that they have relapsed into anorexia nervosa. They've had a really significant relapse, and they're trying to access treatment. But what they say, they were trying to reach out for help, first of all, but then ask for advice around, they're really struggling. There's a lot going on in their life. There's a lot of trauma. They're also a mother, kids. They're a single mum. And they're trying to figure out how to feed themselves because they're finding that really hard and difficult at the moment. If anyone had any tips or someone they could point them to help them with just like recipes to make themselves that are easy to eat, because they find eating, so smoothies or whatever. And the amount of people that commented on that post that were life coaches, that were personal trainers, that were like, I don't know, what do they call, like health coaches or
wellness
whatever.
coaches or whatever.
Wellness coaches, do my course and you will be, you know, oh, I see people like you I get people like you to join my course all the time, and to free their life up and to, you know, to free up their relationship with food. And I can send you my recipe book on, you know, smoothies and high protein, DM me for, literally, holy shitballs. And I was just, you can imagine me sitting there reading this, and, you know, little old me jumps on and goes, hi, you know, this is what I do for a job. You don't have to reach out to me. I'm not trying to sell you anything. But first of all, can I please, you know, please go to your fucking GP, get a eating disorder care plan, then please get a referral to a psychologist that specializes in eating disorders, that is credentialed in that area. Please then also get a referral to a dietitian. That is, I can give you some recommendations. I'll give you a list of recommendations.
The amount of grift in the space is just, it's really, really gross. And like, I'm not saying by any means that recovery coaches or lived experience cannot or shouldn't be compensated. They
oh my God, yes, please pay me, because I do need money to pay my mortgage.
But like, it is a vital skill that should be paid for. I mean, we talked about this in our first episode of like, lived experience is a skill, but I'm talking about the ones who are doing the dodgy that will go, you know, and we'll go over how to spot these people at the end. But there are people who are just there for the grift.
Yeah, they sell a dream.
Yeah, but one kind of point as well that is really can be fraught with danger with recovery coaches is because anyone can sort of decide to be a recovery coach, it means that people can enter it too early in their own recovery.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, we talked about this, which is that awkward part of how do you decide who's quote unquote recovered enough? What criteria do you have to meet? Because obviously recovery looks different for everybody. And obviously there is this issue where you need to address whether someone is well enough or has enough distance from the depths of their eating disorder, because you want to have a safe and positive impact.
By them.
Yeah, for the person that they're coaching. But it's also important that the coach doesn't put themselves at risk as well.
Correct.
You know?
Yeah, very important.
And of course it is hard because then you have, okay, there might be certain certifications that you might get that will determine whether or not you are able to. And again, it's all depending on that person's version of recovery. You know, are they in recovery maintenance? Some people might not like that word, you know?
And And, you know, and on that point, Ash, right, again, we were talking before about how I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea either. And I'm not going to be everyone's cup of tea because, you know, obviously I'm very vocal about recovery maintenance and how I don't believe there's a definition of recovery and that it's not a doom or gloom thing. It's just a reality thing of living in 2026 that, you know, and I guess also because I work with traumatized people, traumatized folk and neurodivergent folks who, you know, show up differently in the world and, you know, all that sort of stuff, you know. Somebody who hears that from me might be like, oh, well, no, I want this to be I want it to be looking this way. And some people, and I'm going to be like, well, I don't believe in that. So I'm probably not your person. Probably go find someone who does believe. And that's fine too.
Yeah, totally. But at the same time, it's also figuring it out together. And I think also when we say recovery maintenance, it's also like I consider myself to be recovered from my eating disorder at the same time as being in recovery maintenance because I'm not arrogant enough to think that I may not relapse down the line. And so it's just acknowledging
which is protective.
Exactly. And I think the main issue is when people haven't worked through their own stuff, exposure to other people's behaviors can trigger relapses in the coaches, but also it may make it worse for the client that they're
and
coaching.
I also think on that point, for people who are working in that field, I think it can also, it creates almost like this othering sort of narrative, right, of these recovery coaches. Again, I sort of mentioned this rainbows and butterflies and I joked about that, but I'm actually quite serious about it. Like life isn't rainbows and butterflies. Life isn't just all beautiful and you're not just going to like all of a sudden come into money and come into a career and come into a family and come into all of these things that you may want just because you're recovered. And I feel like sometimes that can be what's presented, but also I think for the people who are working in that field that might have this really strong idea of what it should look like, or they're presenting a really strong idea of what it looks like, it's also a bit shit for them because I feel like it also takes away this humanness for them. I can only use myself as an example, but say I'm like that and everyone knows, you know, I have trauma. Have I worked through my trauma? Yeah, absolutely. And I've, you know, like I've figured out my systems that work for me, but that doesn't mean I can never be triggered. And also my chronic pain. My chronic pain is fucking shit sometimes. And I have days where I'm in so much pain that I fucking hate my body and I fucking hate life because I can't even fucking get out of bed without like my hip feeling like it's about to break, or, you know, vomiting because of X, Y, Z. And that sucks. And so I feel like when I'm presenting this idea of, you know, well, if you recover, life is going to be just beautiful. That's just not the reality. And for me, if that's the idea that I'm presenting and I'm having a really shitty day and I'm having a really triggering day, or I'm having a really like high pain day, it takes away my ability to actually just present myself as a human. It takes away, I think, almost like this role modeling of like, well, you know, this is the reality of life sometimes, and that's okay. And it doesn't mean that, you know, we throw everything in the bin. It doesn't mean that you have all of a sudden relapse. It doesn't mean that anything negative about you as a person or your body or your life. It means that that's just the reality of life. And I think that if that's the kind of person I was presenting in my work, then I've just taken away a real human kind of element of life. And unfortunately, I think we see that.
And a nuanced approach as well.
Right. And I think, unfortunately, we do see that a little bit maybe in the space. And I'm not saying obviously everyone, but I think some people do maybe reach out to these people because they see that and they want that. And of course you want life just to be beautiful.
And we're not saying that you can't have that.
No,
but it's also,
I fucking love my life.
Yeah, but again, it's all about that nuance and crafting what it is for that person.
Yeah.
And I think it kind of is leaning similarly into another thing that we need to talk about when it goes wrong is when these recovery coaches project this idea of this is what I did, and so this is what will work for you as well.
Yeah. If I can do it, you can too.
Yeah. And it's a projection of their own sort of recovery rules and it's that I recovered, so I know best. And that can be really tricky. And essentially you're not trying to escape one set of rules from that your eating disorder has crafted to then now adopt another set of rules that your recovery coach has now adopted.
So I read this thing, and obviously, it's someone in the space out there, and they wrote something about it's an idea, it's a concept I think that can exist in this world of like, well, you just don't want it bad enough.
Oh my God, I hate that so much. It's so victim blaming. I'm sorry, it's victim blaming.
Right. Or if you can't engage in treatment, if you can't do that thing, you just don't want it hard enough. Or
maybe the treatment's
you
just
can
right.
just not listen to that voice, Like, no, you actually don't have to do that. And no, you don't. But also, like, it's really, like, I think it just takes away this, like, it's so not trauma informed. But, like, it's just like, well, yeah, you just mustn't want recovery enough. Or this idea of like, well, if you can't do this, then you're just not ready.
It's so dehumanizing and it's very victim blamey, and I really, really hate it. And it's
a bit gross. Like it's
just really, really gross. It's just reinforcing rigidity in just a completely different form. It's just,
oh my God, like this perfectionist, like this ideal around what you should be doing when there's no, and like what somebody's capacity is going to shift day to day. It's going to shift from hour to hour, from minute to minute. Someone might have all the capacity in the world to eat something one day, as a simple example. Obviously, it's a lot more complex than that. And the next day, not at all. Like I have a lot of clients that we use that as an example who have to shift on some days to a purely liquid diet because that's all the spoons they can manage. And that's actually really productive for them.
You can't be expected to give 100% every single day. Some days, depending on the vibe, you might only have 40%. And when you have 40%, you still gave 100% because you only had 40.
And it doesn't mean you don't
it doesn't mean that you don't want it enough. Yeah,
like,
I think there shouldn't be this idea that you're pushing one specific recovery path or one specific method. Or again, as soon as you have this one size fits all approach, how is that any different from the treatments that aren't working? And I'm not saying it should be do whatever you want, throw away the guardrails, just vibes.
No,
but
of course
people
not.
can impose their own different ways of doing things and treat it as gospel.
And also people don't just do shit for no reason.
I mean, what I have an issue with is, when people impose their own ways of doing things, treat it as that gospel, and then it becomes especially dangerous when you're developing this level of trust in the person who has that lived experience, because you're looking for fucking any answers to help you get through this. And you have this person who's like, oh, I did it, you can do it too. And then again, it's just they're so vulnerable to wrong or ill-informed advice. And I just think using that authority to even sometimes mistrust evidence-based practices or emerging practices, like new ones that are coming out, like that everyone's kind of saying, oh, more of a personalized approach. Some people will be like, well, no, I went the traditional way, the gold standard, so this should be how it works. So clients may end up like trusting this lived experience over trained professionals, especially if they get into a lot of the wellness woo-woo bullshit. That pipeline is very well trodden.
Especially in this space, like the wellness, like very much comes into like some recovery coaches are so wellnessy. Holy guacamole.
Yeah. And then they just kind of let that emotional resonance of that lived experience kind of override any sort of critical thinking. And so I think it's just
very
more
clear. If you don't want to do yoga, it doesn't mean you're not doing it right. Just to like,
if mindfulness does not work for you, that is fine.
It's
Raising
really
my hand,
okay.
I recovered and I don't like mindfulness.
hey, but like, here's a little like secret is that what is mindfulness? What is that? What even is that? Because
I'm super present all the fucking time. I'm so critically aware of myself all the fucking time.
all right, be a little bit less present, please. But like, what I mean by that though is, right, like, honestly though, like I feel like I can be a bit less present. Like, can I be? That's why I love heated rivalry. It takes away my presence in the world. Anyway, I won't get into that. I won't. I promise. But no. So what I was going to say on that is that we have an idea of what that actually looks like. And again, let's throw that idea in the bin because that's so different. Because it is evidence-based and it is correct and true that the quickest way to regulate yourself is through breathing. But what does that look like for each person? Because for me, of course, it doesn't look like taking some deep breaths and meditating and like imagining and fucking yoga or meditate, whatever that, whatever. Yeah. That works for people. Trust me, that actually does work for people. But for me, it looks so mine's really funny. Did you know that horses, this is so random, but horses to regulate, when horses do their big, they do like their big like out breath.
My dog does the same thing.
That's them regulating themselves. That's actually horses regulating themselves. And I have discovered that works really well for me, especially as a mom. I cannot tell you how often I do a big like.
Me too.
That's a form of mindfulness and regulation. Do you know what else is a form of mindfulness and regulation? Fucking holding ice, fucking like closing your eyes and pretend. Like, dude, there's so many different ways to do it. It doesn't actually just look like
acupressure. Like I've got my little Shakti ball and my Shakti mat. I love it.
Yeah, I use you'll always see me using cream and like massaging my hands.
So TLDR, you shouldn't be swapping your eating disorder's rigid rules for someone else's.
And I think all my clients have heard me say before, I very rarely talk about myself with my clients. They very rarely hear anything about me or my recovery unless...
We'll get to that.
It's very relevant. Okay, all right, go.
Let's rattle through these last ones because otherwise we'll be here for ages. So one of the other things of when it goes wrong is when people do not set boundaries and they have boundary issues and misplaced power dynamics.
Correct.
So with recovery coaches, there can be a massive risk of dependencies. Future episode, by the way, the codependency one, it's half written, much like most of my other episodes. But these episodes...
Here I am just showing up. I'm here.
But you have the clinical perspective. It's, non-clinical, whatever. It doesn't matter. I like to explore your mind palace of information. Anyway.
It's a fun place to be.
These relationships can be super dependency forming if they're not careful, because it does blur the line between friend and counselor, therapist, and that authority figure. And clients may trust that lived experience more than clinical advice because there is that rapport.
And with that, a lot of an element of recovery coaching can be that like text message, in the moment support. And this is something that I say in my intake with everyone that works with me is that, yes, I'm available via text message. I won't always reply. I'm not always available. Obviously, I have when I finish work, I don't work weekends. And also, I won't always reply because I also don't want you to think that you need my permission, or I don't want you to become codependent on me and feel like you have to message me for fucking everything before you can do something. And I think sometimes in this space, we see that happen really often where then that becomes an issue and then it becomes a presenting issue later on down the track where then you have to wean off that text message support. And that's when it's not helpful.
Coaches shouldn't feel responsible for their clients' recovery either.
Absolutely not.
It is great that some coaches can make themselves available at all hours,
It's not reality, and it's not teaching a good thing, because nobody can be available at all hours and nobody should be. And actually it's really important to teach. Like, I am really big in modeling, modeling things, like we said in our first episode back of like, we might not be releasing episodes regularly because and that's a good thing, because we're modeling to you our capacity. Again, it's capacity. Nobody has 24/7 capacity, and no one should, and nobody should be expected to. And that's a really important thing to model, that I have a life and I prioritize my life.
Yeah. But if you do want to have that kind of relationship where you can text your recovery coach, just make sure that those boundaries are set in place and they are agreed upon previously. Because I'm not saying that you can't text them at like 8 p.m. if you've agreed with them for that, Yeah, these relationships should be collaborative, but they also should be structured with those clear boundaries.
Correct.
And also on the flip side, especially if they aren't trained properly or they're ready to take on someone due to their own sort of...
Look, I see some like recovery coaches taking on like some really high trauma, like chronic health, and just doing it because it's money. And I think like,
but also you don't want to have that savior complex, because that's really bad too.
Oh my God, yes.
One that I think is the worst offender, holy fucking shit, is...
Oh, I'm excited.
Is the recovery coach aesthetic, the social media version of a recovery coach.
Recovery coach influencers, don't even.
When people build platforms around like recovery as their identity, it gives me such an ick. They offer like, again,
I die.
Again, it's offering coaching services without that regulation. And when they make recovery their whole aesthetic, while absolutely also reinforcing beauty norms and like the health and recovery, like looking one size and one shape, and that size is really, really small.
Yeah. And again though, like just to like be, obviously I'm in a very privileged white small body, and so like that's not what we're kind of indicate. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that like people can't exist in their bodies. Do you know what I'm trying to like? However, continue.
I'm thinking in particular of a very one specific influencer that is coming to mind from the United States, who the same one who scammed a bunch of people with her fitness and diet plans and got sued by the state of Texas for misleading and taking advantage of people with eating disorders.
Yeah, okay.
If you don't know who I'm talking about.
No. And there's more. There's like, they're everywhere. But yes, I know. And yes, there's one I'm thinking of, and I won't even go down that track because we'll get sued. But yeah.
If you don't know who I'm talking about, the Maintenance Phase podcast did an episode on her back in June 2023.
And if you don't know what podcast we're talking about with Maintenance Phase, please go and listen to Maintenance Phase, because it is, we love.
They're amazing. I should say allegedly. She allegedly did all of those things.
We don't want to get
But
sued.
I'm not mentioning her name.
Hence,
but allegedly.
Like I cannot tell you how much I'm filtering myself.
I know. You know, the kind of people that I mean, they claim that they have beaten their eating disorder, yet they follow their rigid plans and they post those before and after photos and what I eat in a day content. And I'm like, clean eating, blah, 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 blah. I'm sorry. I get really worked up about it because I understand, like, in a sense, recovery, like becoming part of your identity, like what we're doing, like this is what we're doing, and creating content about that. But when what you're doing is upholding the very same diet and wellness culture that is responsible for so many people developing disordered eating and eating disorders, you are turning recovery into monetized content, and it's not even recovery.
Do you know what? Okay, so can I just piggyback that?
Please, jump on.
Because one of my biggest issues, and I fucking was about to have a conniption with it like beginning of this year, end of last year. Like I think I was about to like actually just burn everyone to the ground, to be honest with you, in the eating disorder space. I was like so close, like fuck you all, I'm out. Is the fact that of course we know that nobody in a profession can be across absolutely everything. No one can represent everybody. Nobody can they have their experiences and that's their experiences. They can't talk to other experience, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it's no secret here that Ash and I are political beings, and that I truly believe, Ash, I'm pretty sure you do, otherwise I've completely misread our friendship, that everything is political, especially political. Eating disorders. Health is political. Eating disorders are especially political. And what I've really struggled with is exactly that, to piggyback off what you're talking about, this eating disorder recovery aesthetic has no space or no room for the, in inverted commas, like uglier stuff, as in, it is political, and what is happening in our world actually really fucking impacts eating disorders and eating disorder treatment and access to treatment and folks that are suffering. And I don't think I have seen a single person, other persons, well, a few maybe, speak about it or acknowledge it or even like acknowledge it exists. And in fact, I've seen people outwardly say, I have chosen not to talk about that because I don't know enough about it, and I can't talk about everything. I can't advocate for everything. Fucking bullshit.
The only like devil's advocate I will say on that is because when you have these are the people who've made their livelihoods online, which again, with this whole space, as soon as then you don't like, people are like, oh, I don't want to speak out because I don't want to get punished. I don't want to get shadow banned. And yes, that is absolutely a problem.
Yeah.
At the same time, I still think there are some things that are worth speaking out about.
I think there are 100% things that are worth speaking, especially like, obviously we're political, but like starving people and eating disorders.
Agreed.
Anyway.
Watch us get shadow banned now. No.
Sorry.
Anyway. So the last one that we'll get into before we look at what to look for in a recovery coach, and this one is hard because two things can be true at once. What a surprise. I know that recovery coaches can be very good at filling the gaps in...
That needs to be a sticker or on a t-shirt or a hat. Two things can be true at once. Anyway, yes.
Go. I know that recovery coaches can be really good at filling the gaps in the system and offering support to services who may not be able to access care. But where it goes wrong is when people rely on these coaches for everything and use them instead of clinical help and treatment. Obviously, there's a big, huge problem with accessibility to treatment. Things are unaffordable, the distance, it's privatized, it's not covered by insurance, multitude of many other reasons. But a recovery coach cannot take the place of an eating disorder clinician and medical help. Feel free to disagree with me on that, but...
And a good recovery coach should be... Okay, so there's caveats, like there's, with anything, there's nuance.
Of course.
So, like, for example, I have clients that are really highly traumatized by the psychological space, eating disorder treatment space. And so they don't feel ready to access psychological support at this time because... that's just not where they're at, and they can't engage in it, and it's really triggering for them. And so, whilst obviously I'm not doing psychology with my clients, absolutely not, but the training that I personally have, and it's because I'm qualified in this, is that I can do like counseling. I can do, a form of that, right? Like, again, I'm not doing a psychology session, no.
Yeah.
But so and again, it's depending who your profession is, like who your practitioner is, right? Like, or recovery coach is. So like some people won't be able to do what I do because that's not ethical. But
where it goes wrong again is when people are like, oh, especially if the coach is saying this, like, oh, you don't need them. I can do it all.
Oh God, no. Yeah.
That's
especially
the kind
in the
of
dietetic
vibe.
world. And this is where we see teams work really beautifully with communication. And I think that could be a future episode, is like communication MDTs, multidisciplinary team meetings, and like communication between teams, and how that should be the top level of care. Should just be the base standard model. But what we unfortunately see sometimes is dietitians not communicating with like recovery coaches. And so then we see this disconnect in communication and implementation into treatment, like into the dietetic treatment. And we do see recovery coaches unfortunately having to be like navigating what they're going to have for lunch or navigating these things because there's this like disconnect in communication. And that's a really hard one to navigate. And so I really encourage dietitians to communicate really well with their recovery coaches or whoever that person is, so that they have the information to be able to support their client in those food sort of nutrition choices. But no, we shouldn't be seeing, obviously, recovery coaches being a fucking dietitian.
Exactly. And again, they are to be used alongside of or for the recovery coach purpose, but not instead
not in
of.
replacement, no, especially not the medical. And a recovery coach should be really well skilled in identifying when like a medical crisis button needs to be pushed, and
Absolutely.
should be really well trained in like supporting a medical professional in making a shitty choice basically.
Yeah. I mean, coaches can be really good to fill the gaps in between treatments or help you steer towards treatments that is helpful, or a stopgap while you're waiting for something more intensive.
Well, like I said, I love setting up teams. I love being like, oh, we actually probably need a dietitian in place here. Let's, figure out who might work for you.
And you've got connections but again, you cannot rely on a coach to do it all and everything. And coaches should not be gatekeeping, like, I'm not letting you.
Oh, no. It shouldn't be a requirement that you only see that person. Absolutely fucking not. I do believe like you can have I have clients that don't have, a psychologist or a dietitian, and that works. Like, it's fine. But that's not because I'm like, no, you don't need that.
You also know that if that person needed like medical intervention,
oh my God,
you
yes,
knew that you would
totally.
would never say to them, oh, well, you don't need to go see someone. You don't need to go to emergency because I can help you.
Absolutely, yeah. No.
Again, all of this has nuance and there is multiple things at once, but it's more this idea of gatekeeping, thinking I can do everything.
I'm the answer. You are never the answer.
No.
Sorry.
What it comes down to is ultimately lived experience is super powerful, but it's not automatically safe.
It's not automatically safe, and it's not enough to
just like clinical support on its own is not enough. Lived experience on its own is not enough.
Correct. Yeah.
Feeling supported, heard, and understood is absolutely important, but it needs to be done with boundaries, with the client at the center, that's collaborative, and by someone who has done and continues to do reputable and diverse training.
Can you ask me a question around what I'd like to see the recovery coaching space look like in the future?
What would you like the recovery coach space to look like in the future? That's a great question.
Yeah. So thank you for asking that, Ash. That is a really good question. Obviously, I'd love to see it more regulated. No, but so like I said, obviously, again, I don't identify with the term recovery coach for all of the reasons, obviously, I have already expressed. And so from my angle, I would love to see what I do as a more widely spread profession. So my dream for myself and my career would be for me to develop something that is like a qualification for people. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know what we're called. Like eating disorder practitioner, right, is what I use at the moment. I don't know, it's not recovery coaching. I would like to see it more step over into that, to be honest with you. I would like to see recovery coaching as a whole step over into that, unless it is, because we've got peer workers, and I believe recovery coaches and peer workers they kind of like hold hands and can be like a bit of a crossover and can essentially almost be the same thing.
You're an eating disorder recovery professional.
Yeah. Not even recovery, because I don't even like the word recovery. I'll come up with something one of these days, but what I would like to see is it to become more regulated, but it to become more of a profession, like a proper profession, like we would see like a psychologist be a profession. So what I would like to see, and when I think of, and I'm already doing like developing courses, that's my dream in the future. But what I would like to see, in my like criteria of someone who might engage in the course or the profession that I'm trying to create, what I would like to ultimately see is someone with a bachelor's degree minimum in something that's relevant. Because I think it is my own opinion. And again, with what I do, not recovery coaching as a whole, there's obviously different versions, but with what I do, I would love to see what I do specifically become a really integral, supported part of an eating disorder team. I would love to obviously see it become, part of the Medicare, blah, 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 and get refunds and rebates and that sort of stuff. But I'd love to see it become a really solid profession and really regulated and really like having people who are very qualified to do it. Yep. Like it is a qualification. Like you do, I don't know, maybe you do your 3-year undergrad of psychology and then you do your social work degree, or you do your home services degree, or you do whatever it is, and then you go in to do this to specialize. That's how I would like to see it develop.
Yeah, I hard agree. I think it's definitely something that needs more regulation and more monitoring, and something that has like set sort of standards that everyone, like people can go and look at and be like, okay, is this person doing this, this, and this? Yep, that's a green flag.
A green flag, which, and it's not to say that like the peer work recovery coach part won't be relevant ever. Like I think it's important, like we've already identified. But yeah, that's kind of
it's good to have some guardrails.
The direction. Anyway, green flag.
It's good to have those guardrails, right? But in the absence of that, when you're factoring someone like an eating disorder practitioner, recovery coach, all of that into your treatment team, let's tell you some of the things to look out for, because they are valuable to have in your team. And we recommend having one if it suits your style and finding someone that suits you. But you need to do your due diligence. So what makes a good insert phrase you want to use here? So the first things are they need to have a lived experience. I think that should be like the most basic of requirements, because otherwise what's the fucking point?
I don't even know how that would work, like if you didn't.
So, I mean, I know we need to say it because, again, common sense ain't common enough. But no, some green flags. For me, I would say as a non-negotiable, again, in my personal opinion, is weight inclusive.
Oh my God, yes.
I know.
Radical
thinking here.
And have you told anyone that yet? Like that should be a service announcement, public service announcement as well.
Here I am coming up with brand new ideas. No.
Holy guacamole. Look at you go.
But also a non-diet approach. Again, should be fucking obvious, but
it's not always
to be said. And again, trauma-informed approach, equally as important. And not just someone saying, oh, I'm trauma-informed, but having that qualification to say, or not qualification, but
such a gripe. There's one thing saying you can literally just put on your website, I work from a trauma-informed lens, and that's beautiful. But then there's the implementation of that.
The best way to figure it out is to ask them, what do you mean by trauma-informed? What does that look like in your practice? Because if they don't know, they won't be able to tell you. It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
They also should have evidence of a diverse range of trainings and qualifications and be committed to ongoing learnings as well. Like it shouldn't just be like a one and done. I'm like, oh yeah, cool, I'm done.
Really important, because we see, unfortunately, in a lot of the qualifications we see in the space is it's almost like a little echo chamber, and it all is coming from the one place. It creates a little echo chamber and like a lack of knowledge for other experiences and systems. And
Inside Out has a whole bunch of e-learnings that you can do. There's a bunch of certifications you can do with ANZAD, I believe.
There is, yeah.
The Fat Positive Framework that Nick McDermott has done, trainings on neurodivergence and ARFID. I know that Margot has dropped an amazing course.
Incredible course. Yep. And also, I also don't think it should just be eating disorder, professional development either. Because,
agreed.
Like I said, eating disorders are a secondary thing. And so we also need to see it in trauma, neurodivergence, gender, like all of these different.
All of the things. But also having a network that you can refer to if you say, I'm not specialized in that, I can learn, but also it's not really my place to be able to talk from that lived experience. Let me find you someone else who can join me in that thing, and not having that sort of closed off thing of I can do it all, you know? You want them to be collaborative and not authoritarian, but also comfortable with flexibility, and, you know, there's no black or white rules. They need to be transparent about their scope of practice. They need to be willing to work with other treatment teams. You know, willingness is the bare minimum at this point. It shouldn't be done like against your will. Like, I'm going to go and bring people in. But if it's, again, like we were saying, you can't work with anyone else. Again, we'll get to red flags later, but the green flag should be
that, right? Yeah, like boundary. They should.
Can you see my next note? It says clear boundaries.
Yeah, okay.
But yes, clear boundaries. But I think one of the big thing is that they are supporting you and putting you first. Client-centered, always. And when we say lived experience, you also want them to be in a stable place, and at least in some kind of recovery maintenance. There should be sort of evidence that they've been in a good place for a while. And if they have at any point, if they say, hey, I'm going to stop practicing for a little while because I just need to go and sort myself out, that's totally fine as well. Again, it's all recovery maintenance. You obviously should be looking at the price, and they should be charging you. Let's be honest, because if no one, they are doing a job, and they shouldn't just be handing out free services and advice outside of a volunteer or public service kind of thing. If it's free, what is it for you, you know?
Mm-hmm. And also that can be a red flag because it can be, there's a power imbalance there when things are free services. It's not ethical.
Exactly. But one, a really big green flag is when they offer a discovery call for free, oftentimes, to get to know you and see what the working relationship is like. And that's always a really good
Can Can I say how, and like all of my clients that work with me will be like, yeah, my discovery call, Callie, was a fucking shit show. I am, and look, this client, like this, what you see is what you're going to get. You're going to talk to me on a discovery call. You're going to get a really good picture of who I am. Chaos. So I like am the most, and I always, one of the first things I say to people on a discovery call is like, you're probably like, how you feeling? Like, you're probably really nervous to be speaking to a new person. Just to like help you out. Same. There's no like kind of guideline of which this call is gonna, I don't have guidelines for the way this call is gonna go. So I apologize in advance if this is just a fucking shit show. Like if we're just like, but I invite it.
Again, and like you said, it's what you see is what you get, right? That's what the discovery call should be about.
And some people love it. Some people, it's going to be not going to be for some people, but that's what they exist, sort of.
Exactly. Being able to get an idea of what they're like. Moving on to amber flags now. If they talk about their own recovery story and their own recovery a lot. Again, it's not inherently bad to like express like, this is my lived experience.
Sometimes
and that can
it's
build
relevant,
trust.
But it's not
if it's relevant. But if they're centering themselves,
it's not an all the time conversation. It shouldn't be the model for which they practice.
Exactly. Is it, am I being supported or am I listening to someone else's story? Is it an ego thing?
Are they, because you should not, as a, you should not be centering yourself in someone else's experience. It is, they should be centered in their experience. And so it can be an adjunct, like it can be a little like, like sometimes I'll say to some of my clients, and I actually ask permission if I'm about to share something about myself. I actually ask permission to do so, like to see if they're okay with that, which is really powerful, by the way. Like I think everyone needs to ask people for permission more. But also I'll just be like, I know, like if someone's really going through it, sometimes when I'm like, I know, like I get it, that can be really powerful because they're like, oh yeah, okay. But that's not me saying, I know exactly how you're feeling right now. That's not, when I was in this situation, when I was in hospital and was doing this, no. It's just, yeah, I get it. Of course you feel that way.
Ideally, like if you want to hear more, invite it, that can be on the person as well. Like, oh, can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, people do ask me questions. They say, in your experience, in your recovery, did you? And I'm, if it's appropriate, I'm happy to answer that, but...
Another sort of amber flag is if they're very available, like constant messaging, late night support, being always on.
I don't think they should be available at nighttime. I mean, okay, like, no, I have kids, so maybe that's varying.
But also, unless it's predetermined.
Yeah, like, well, I mean...
Like they may say, oh, I've got, I turn my phone on from 7 to 8 if there's anything that have come up and there's any urgent things I need to take care of. But other than that, like anything outside of that window.
I think they should be modeling. I think we should be modeling days off. I think we should be modeling that I'm not available, that I can't answer all the time, that sometimes you won't get a reply from me. But that doesn't mean anything. Yeah. Agree.
And I mean, while being like always on might sound great in theory, it can create those dependencies and signal like that poor boundaries on their end, It's
not helpful in the long term. It creates another issue that just has to be then broken.
Also, it seems a bit desperate. Just saying.
Oh, it's just, and also, yeah.
The other amber flag is if they're very expensive for not a lot. Like anyone asking for too much money or even like charging you to like look into sessions before you even really know what they're able to offer you or what they're like or what if it's going to be beneficial to you. Again, similarly, like we said, if it's too cheap or free, it may be a sign that they're not overly qualified or that they're like,
could be a power imbalance, a bit unethical.
Yeah. What's the motivation?
Can I add another? I know an amber flag. I've got one.
Yeah.
I'm like an excited toddler. And this is probably a bit controversial and obviously nuanced, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, testimonies. I'm a bit of a, I don't agree with testimonies because I'm
unless you're adding some bad ones in as well.
No one's going to add bad testimonies into their business because that's a bad business model. But
that's the whole point, You're clearly curating an idea of what you want people to say.
But you're asking people to write something about you that's nice and then presenting it to the world as if it's like, see, I'm amazing. But like...
Especially when you're asking people to submit testimonials about you. It's like, no one's going to... Like you said, no one's going to put on their website, oh, they were awful. They made me worse. They're not going to publish those ones.
Isn't it a bit ick? Like, I don't know how anyone trusts those.
I mean, I always, like my whole thing, and this is for everything, is I go to Google reviews, because you're like, I'll take some of the 1 stars with a grain of salt. and I'll take some of the 5 stars with a grain of salt. But if you have like 53 stars saying the same thing, oh, this is what I experienced, or 51 stars saying the same thing, that's something to take.
Agree. And, as a little tidbit of information, I guess, when you're, so registered health professionals, it is against their codes of ethics to have testimonials, so they're not allowed to gather testimonials. So like dietitians, etc., are not actually allowed to have testimonials or gather testimonials from clients, just to like, because again, it can be seen as unethical, but also like, what's the word? Like
Misleading,
and also like, oh fuck, what's the word?
It'll come to you.
I
think that's a good point though, of kind of look at what sort of clinical guardrails there are, or clinical requirements, or things that you're not allowed to do as a medical clinician, and see what they're not allowed to do, and see if these people are kind of doing the opposite,
And I mean, recovery coaches are allowed to use testimonials, right? Like there's never going to be, I guess, a rule that says they're not allowed to, but it's just considering how that makes you feel.
Yeah. And then the last amber flag is, honestly, you just feel unsure. You can't explain why. The vibe is just off. You might feel slightly judged. You might feel pressured, or just literally just off. Don't ignore those feelings. They're totally valid. Explore them, but trust your gut.
With any professional on your team, you are allowed to change them. You don't have to stick with them just because. You can at any point. You don't have to have a proper reason. You can just, obviously there's an issue, I think, when you're always changing, someone, you're always flipping, because, but they might be challenging something that you don't like, and you don't like this, want to change, and that should be challenged then. But you're allowed to change professionals. There should, no guilt.
And you don't even need to have the words to explain it. If it's just off, then it's fine.
Doesn't matter about your professionals' feelings. They can feel however they want to feel. It doesn't matter.
And then last thing, straight up red flags. Avoid, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Avoid, just do not. No qualifications.
No qualifications.
Like straight up, if I said tomorrow, I'm going to be a recovery coach, I'm going to take clients.
Don't see Ash.
That would be a major red flag.
Don't go see Ash, I'm sorry.
So like, yes, I am an expert by lived experience, but that does not make me qualified to charge anyone to guide them through recovery. Like, I'm like, straight up, don't do that.
Red flag, don't, if they're promising you something, if they're promising you a dream.
Over-promising, overconfidence, all of that. Red flag.
If they're telling you they are the solution.
Yeah, like I can cure your eating disorder. Anyone who says that, run in the opposite direction. Anyone who moralizes food or bodies is an absolute no-go. Anyone that says like clean eating or take control of your body again.
Wellness, yeah. Grifts.
Yeah, you're here to recover from an eating disorder, not to be led into another one,
Yeah.
Anyone that has this similar, like you said, oh, I've got the secret, or this rigid, this worked for me.
I'll give it to you.
Yeah, DM me. As soon as it's like, oh, this worked for me, it'll work for you kind of messaging.
I am the thing that is going to make you recover. No, you're not.
Right. Anyone that has this kind of like savior complex.
Anyone who refuses to acknowledge experiences outside of their own experience.
Hardcore, yes. Any major red flag is anyone who acts like your clinician but isn't one. They shouldn't be trying to give you psychological advice beyond their scope. And same goes with anyone trying to treat your trauma or diagnose it when they do not have the formal qualifications to do so. Don't do that. Discouraging you from seeing any other professionals, or say they won't work with your treatment team, like that's a red flag. Anyone who blurs the boundaries by either like being too available, oversharing personal details, acting like your bestie and your coach all in one, expecting emotional support from you, that's a real red flag. And then also getting like weirdly competitive. Major red flag. Don't do that. Similarly, anytime that you feel that there's this dependency being created, like feeling like you can't cope without them, that the coach is encouraging constant reliance or constant contact.
If you're feeling pressured to be doing a particular thing, if you feel any sort of shame, if you feel any sort of guilt, if you feel scared to like say, I didn't do this thing, or this is what's happened, or, you should not be scared to tell. Ultimately, I hope that that's the relationship that I create with my clients, is that I don't want you to be scared to tell me anything.
Yeah, you shouldn't be fearful of them.
You might still, for different various reasons, you might still feel that way, but, unfortunately, there's a lot like if it's that you just don't want it hard enough. You just don't want it enough. Well, you just don't do that behavior.
Any coach that reprimands you, makes you feel invalidated, like don't even go there.
Pressured, or like something is wrong with you, or you're doing it wrong, or you're showing up wrong.
Good support builds independence. Bad support builds reliance.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Anyone that is clearly still in their own eating disorder, like red flag. On any ongoing restriction, any rigid behaviors, any body obsession.
It sounds like a crazy one, but it's not.
It's not, as we've mentioned, as we've given examples, make sure that their recovery messaging matches their actions. Like, you should not feel confused or triggered by them. Hardcore, like, no.
They should also be having a diverse range of training. They should be able to consider a diverse range of experiences.
100%. Yeah.
And maybe that's what I was trying to say before.
Yeah, I get you. They dismiss or undermine any other professions as well. Like, so if they say like, oh, dietitians don't get it, the system's broken, just listen to me. Like, as flawed as the system can be, like, isolating you is super dangerous. So don't do that. And then obviously, financial stuff. If it's obviously a personal choice on how much you want to spend or how much you feel like you can commit, but you shouldn't be feeling any sort of financial pressure or feel exploited. You shouldn't have to pay a large amount or in a massive...
exploited is probably the key word there,
Yeah, like, you shouldn't have to pay a large amount of money or in a massive like lock-in contract to figure out if they're worth seeing or if you want to continue working with them. If they're pushing like, expensive packages without like transparency, guilting you if you can't afford it.
Or you must do this like to work with me. You must purchase this to work with me.
Anything that blurs care with like sales tactics, run in the opposite direction. You shouldn't like feel scared to like it should be a subscription you feel scared to cancel,
Nah.
And I mean, we already just said it, but this is probably the biggest red flag and probably the most important one. If they make you feel like shit, or if you feel like they're harming you, you don't even have to have any proof or like hard evidence about it. You can just kind of feel it. If they're making you feel anxious around food, more controlled, less trusting of yourself, they make you feel awful about your body, you feel shamed or reprimanded, or if you feel scared of them, it's time to move on.
Yeah, that's a good rule for life.
Right? Is there anything we have missed here, Callie, in this near 2-hour discussion?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I'll probably think of 1,000 things as the day goes on.
Again, we can talk about this for ages.
Look,
so,
and we're never going to be able to capture everything.
Yes.
It's never going to be a possibility. This is just meant to be a snapshot.
Yes. And all of this is our opinion in terms of what we think. You shouldn't take what we say as gospel either. Take what you want, leave whatever.
Your own opinions.
Take what you want, leave the rest. It's all fine. But I think we have been super thorough, and I hope that you can take this episode at least as a guide to feel confident about whether a recovery coach is right for you, maybe feel better equipped to find one that suits your needs if you do choose to seek one out. And the last thing I'm going to do is just a quick plug again for the Inside Out e-clinic. It offers free, evidence-based e-therapies for those who are struggling with disordered eating, restricting, and binging. You can also get access to accounts for health professionals as well, and carers. So link it in the description below as usual. See if it's right for you, and decide whether or not you want to go with that. But get a recovery coach, don't get a recovery coach. We don't really care that much. We do care, but it's like, this is all your personal decision. But if you do, I hope this has been helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
I mean, it's weird to end on a note, which is just like, listen to us or don't. I don't care. Like,
you do you. Like, at the end of the day, you're going to do what you want to do.
I mean, the fact that you've listened to if you're hearing this and you're listened all the way to the end
of this episode, and like,
I hope that you found it helpful. I really need to get better at stop like discrediting everything that we say of like, just don't listen to us. I don't care.
Please don't be mean to us.
And this is why I'm not a recovery coach. You've been listening to The Recovery Feed, hosted by Ash Myberg and Callie Cote. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube at The Recovery Feed Pod, or via email at therecoveryfeedpodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, thank you so much. You can do that at Buy Me a Coffee. It helps fund the running of this podcast to make sure we can keep bringing you episodes like this one. Extra information and resources are always available on our website, therecoveryfeed.com. And if you're so inclined, you can leave us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. This podcast was recorded on the lands of the Gadigal and Gubbi Gubbi people. This podcast is general in nature and has not taken your personal circumstances or medical history into account. We are here to share our own experiences and the things that we have found helpful throughout our own personal recovery journeys. Please remember that each person's journey and circumstances are different, and not all of the information contained in this podcast may be relatable to you. It's important you consult your own GP or recovery team to seek out tailored advice before making any important decisions relating to your own health and recovery process. If you have found any of the content in this episode distressing, please contact your care team or a medical professional. If you or someone you know is in crisis and needs help now, please contact emergency services in your region immediately.